Pete Mitchell, a powerhouse in the world of track cycling.
Pete Mitchell is back with a bang.
His journey is all about passion and perseverance. Pete has been a part of the British Cycling Development Pathway and Team Sky, alongside legends like Chris Hoy and Victoria Pendleton. His career is full of remarkable achievements, including becoming the British Elite Sprint Champion in 2024.
Neck and neck, shoulder to shoulder, into the home straight. It's up to the line. It is that first Elite Sprint title. 34 years old.
And setting a world record. As a tandem pilot, he's clinched 7 world titles, a Paralympic silver and 2 Commonwealth Games silver medals. Pete's insights will leave you motivated and ready to tackle your own challenges. So Pete Mitchell, thank you for joining us. Welcome to your home.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. Thank you for having me.
Not at all. Okay, so let's start from the very beginning. So cycling. Tell us a little bit about how you got into cycling, the journey. Was it something that you've loved from, being small?
Yeah, I guess so. So, yeah, I mean, I've been riding and enjoying riding my bike like as a child, like many people do. I guess like where it kind of began, if you like, was I started with the local club to where I lived when I was sort of 12 or 13.
Okay.
They did like organised rides at the weekend, so went along, and then they raced at the track in Brighton in the summer. So yeah, I used to go mountain biking with them in the winter, and then the summer went to race, and it was good. I was rubbish at mountain biking, but I was good at track racing. So that's where I kind of started, did the season there, and started racing further afield, and it all kind of sort of continued from there really.
So in terms of track racing, can you tell us a little bit about that, and just for those who don't know?
Yeah, well, mate, it's amazing because when I first started, nobody knew anything about track cycling. You'd have to start off by saying, have you ever seen of a velodrome or heard of a velodrome? And the answer was usually no, but obviously cycling's become much more popular and mainstream over the last 20 years. But yeah, in terms of what it is, for an Olympic or World Championship point of view, we race on an indoor 250 metre wooden track with roughly 42-degree bankings, and I compete in the sprint events, which at the moment means the sprint and the keirin. In the past, I've also done team sprint and kilo, both individually and on a tandem. So that's kind of what it is in a nutshell. There's all kinds of different events and rules and regulations which get pretty complex, but that's the basis of it. I'm a track sprinter.
Fab. Tandem then, tell me about a tandem. What's it like to cycle on a tandem?
So if the actual riding a tandem, it depends who you're riding with. If you kind of have good synchronicity and you're moving the bike together, it just feels like a normal bike, but it weighs a ton. So it's a bit like being on a boat instead of a bike. It's slow to react, it's slow to turn. But it works pretty well. If you are struggling with that synchronicity, then you're pushing and pulling against each other, and it swerves all over the place. So
you do have to be in sync.
Yeah, very much so. If you think when you're rocking the bike, when you stand up, for example, you move the bike from side to side, and if you're doing that in a different way, then you kind of swerve all over the place.
Wow. Sounds kind of scary. Are you at the front, the back?
So I was on the front, and the person on the back was visually impaired.
Wow. That must be really rewarding to get involved in that.
Yeah, you know what? Every pilot has a slightly different reason for doing what they do.
Yeah.
Some people see it as they're part of a team and they're trying to win. It's like absolutely the fact that one person is visually impaired is almost irrelevant.
Yeah.
Other people see it as like a more of a guide kind of role,
Okay.
And sort of you're allowing somebody else, or not allowing, but contributing towards somebody else. Achieving their kind of their dreams, if you like, and their sporting aspirations. It's quite different, and it comes across in the interview. I mean, at the end, when we're at the Paralympics, our accreditation says competition partner.
Right.
So, and some people see that as a real kick in the teeth that, hang on, like I'm just as much part of this race as they are.
Yeah.
And other people are kind of see that's how their role is. So it is rewarding,
Yeah.
but is quite a complicated
Do you
answer
feel
to
like
that
a
question.
certain level of responsibility to help win in that role? Then is it, in your mind, is it that focus on winning because they're relying on you in a way?
Yeah, I mean, technically speaking, there's more responsibility, I would say, with the person doing the steering, particularly from a tactical point of view when we do the match sprint, where there's tactics involved, where it kind of is the person on the back mirrors the person on the front in terms of their effort level. Partly because they haven't got the steering, and partly because they're visually impaired, so they haven't got the information of what's happening in the race. So there's a lot of responsibility there, I would say. When it comes to time trial stuff, though, it's so repeatable. I think I've certainly felt we're just in it together, and we could both mess it up if we win together. It was kind of felt 50-50. So I'd say it's like any other. I felt it was like any other team event, really, where you kind of don't want to let other people down, but that's not actually what you're thinking about. You're thinking about winning together,
And is that what you focus on when you're in a race? Is it just the win? Or how you mentally, what are you thinking about when you get onto the bike? What's going through your mind when you start a race?
In the race, so it's the kilometre time trial, and it takes about a minute. So within the race, it's just focusing on the execution.
Yeah, the technique.
I mean, for most of the race, it's just going as fast as you can. There's certain things, for example, when we're in the gate, we think about the first pedal rev and the execution of that. But if I'm honest, it is, obviously we practice lots, and it's kind of focusing on intent, as opposed to anything else, I would say. Is
it like an adrenaline just before the race starts? Do you feel like this, like a change, or are you in control of yourself in that moment, or how does it feel?
I think so. There is. I always think it's kind of a crescendo, right? So it's not just the moment before you race. It's probably there for weeks beforehand.
Yeah, I thought
building. And I think one thing I found over my career and racing is to manage it in different ways at different times. So
explain a little,
right before you race, you want to have like a controlled surge of adrenaline, because that's what's going to allow you to go faster and do better than you can in training. But if you have that for the days and weeks beforehand, it's exhausting, and you'll come to start line completely fried, mentally and physically. If your heart's racing because you're about to race 2 weeks out, then that's not great. So it's really it's difficult. I think I always found it much easier to manage on race day once the warm up begins, because that's the routine part, and the days before much harder to manage. Where you kind of want to visualize the race and everything when actually it's miles away. And
do you take time to visualize the race beforehand?
Yeah. So I would do. So I can't help myself probably in the days before with just closing my eyes and thinking about it. And then when it came to the warm up, I'd plan it into the warm up. So for example, I would visualize the race, then do my 15-minute warm up, then visualize the race again, then sit down and chill for 20 minutes, then do an activation effort, then visualize the race again, then relax 15 minutes, then visualize the race again, and then race. But that's like all kind of routine. So I kind of run through it 3 times, I would say, but like at a set point. And I find if I go through it at a set point, then when I'm not visualizing it, I can forget about it, because I know that I've given myself an opportunity to think about it again. Do you know what I mean? It's like literally part of the plan.
That's fab.
Instead of just like closing your eyes and thinking about it for 2 hours non-stop.
Constantly, So you're giving yourself that time to have that visualization, and then that's it. Yeah. And when you've won a race, do you go back to that visualization and think that there was any sort of, I don't know, like did it help? Was there something where you've ever, I've completely visualized that moment and there it was, and then you've won? Or is there a difference in that visualization from when maybe you don't win, or you've come second, or whichever? Is there anything in the power of the mind, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I always, when I visualize, I always have or try to put myself through the sensations as well.
Yeah.
So I visualize it going well, but when I say going well, I don't mean winning. I mean like feeling good.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
the nature of the race is a minute flat out. So by the end, you're very, very fatigued, and you're at, it's a very painful event. It's high levels of lactate. You can imagine doing anything from running as fast as you can for a minute, for example. The 400 meters is known as being one of the hardest events, and I'd say it's even more extreme in the kilo. But I always visualize feeling good, and don't visualize the pain. No. Visualize feeling good and powering through, and then as soon as I think you get the result, I then would forget about the bike race and celebrate or commiserate the result kind of thing. So I think it's probably gets you to the finish line, and then then you're not in the bike race, and you can feel whatever comes over naturally, I think.
And what is it about the race? Like, is there like an absolute love for what part of the feeling? Is it the win? Is it the well, not all the pain?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I don't.
What is it about it? Like the draw?
Yeah, there's for me, I don't enjoy riding kilos, and now that I've sort of retired from the kilo part, I may well do one at some point, but I'm not sat here thinking I can't wait to do my next kilo.
Okay.
I really enjoyed going faster.
Yeah.
So going through the process, putting in the work, kind of thing, and then seeing increase in performance, improvement.
Because you
in
did
performance.
that, didn't you? Before I've read this about you, where you break your record. You beat your previous personal best in the summer of 2023.
Yeah, well, yeah. So this is more recently. So when I was, and this is where it all gets quite interesting, I guess. So I had like my tandem kind of career, which stopped for a reason I'm sure we'll talk about, and then I had 3 years out. Like I went to the gym, kind of like a normal person, if you like.
Yeah.
No reason other than to kind of roughly stay in shape, and that was it. And then got back into cycling because I missed it, and trained for a race, and then ended up going fast, like way faster than I did the first time round in my early 20s when I was like trying my hardest, and I wasn't, it wasn't that I wasn't trying hard more recently. But I would say the circumstances under which I'm training aren't as good as they were, but I'm still going like significantly faster.
What is the reason? Why are you going faster?
I think it's a combination of lots of things. I think, and I'm comparing this to what was the senior academy days, because tandem, I don't know how fast I was going by myself.
Yeah.
And it's a question I'll never know the answer to. What would I have done at my best on the tandem? Because I was on the tandem. But so when I'm, looking at how I used to train and how the current national team train now, they ride the tracks I'd say at least 3 times a week.
Yeah.
They do plus on top of that kind of ergo sessions and 2 or 3 gym sessions. And then now I ride the track once a week and do a couple of gym sessions in my garage, which is like I've got some decent kit, but nothing like the facilities at British Cycling. Clearly, like they have, world leading high performance equipment, and I've got kind of a, just a squat rack, and that's about it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't look like it should work, and it is. And I think it's a combination that I was very stressed. I've thought about this quite a lot. I was very stressed when I was on that senior academy.
Wanting to make sure you were getting through or getting the goals, reaching your targets, maybe?
I think I got stuck in a negative kind of feedback of being set targets to remain on the programme.
Right. Because
I had like a good year, a stale year, and then 2 years of being set targets to stay on the programme.
Yeah.
Which is such a negative way of training, because
it's just outcome based, and it's forget, like, where's the fun?
You want to train to win. You want to train to win. Everyone wants to train to win. You want to train to get the result, get the time, not to just scrape through and keep your funding. Which I know so many athletes get stuck in that rut, but I was that definitely really impacted me with my enjoyment and I reckon performance.
Yeah.
And I also I'm a case study of one. So I'm not going to say this is done based off like research and documented.
No, yeah.
But I think I was doing way too much training. I was too tired.
Yeah.
And I think the way I train now is better based off my own experience.
Like your body's response to it is clearly working.
Yeah. And I've coached full time for the last 4 years since I stopped. And I think I've learned a lot, and I know myself quite well. And the way I train now is different. And I think better. I think that's kind of it.
I think as well though, you see that, I read once about Pele, and it said that he would go to the game beforehand, the footballer, he'd go sit in the dressing room and visualize first of all of the wins, so he'd focus on his winning and the hitting the ball in the back of the net, but then also on top of that he would remember the enjoyment and why he got into it. And there's something about enjoyment that really does create a result. Potentially.
The way I describe it is there's two things. One is when you're the favourite for an event and you win, all you feel is relief.
Yeah.
It's great, but it's not really that. If you win an event when you weren't expecting to win, it is the best feeling in the world. So it's very interesting, how mindset, it's very hard to control, changes the way you feel about stuff. And and I worked with a psychologist years ago who was sometimes perhaps not the best, but one thing that really stuck with me is I wrote down a little kind of thing I would say to myself before I race, which is, see if I can remember it now, is I'm going to give 100%. I'm proud to represent my country. Today doesn't change what I've already achieved, and my family love me. I always thought that was such the last one in particular was such an important one, just to remind yourself that for me it's just a bike race. And
it doesn't take anything away from who you are as a wonderful person, and you're loved no matter what you do. That's really you need that. I think everyone needs to know. But
it's so easy in the moment to not.
And put everything on it, and
I've let everyone down. How often do you see a losing athlete say I've let everyone down?
And you don't, that's something that, and I don't think that ends in anything well either. I think the more that you do that, it's detrimental to your soul. It destroys you a little bit, and then why would you want to keep doing that? I don't know. I don't see that as being a positive sort of forward. But in terms of just going back to what you were saying about why you stopped, was it the tandem, did you say?
Yeah.
Do you want to explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I've been senior academy. I was on the tandem for 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
Hang on, where was it? 2013. Yeah, so 7 years. And things were okay. We had a really good run into the Rio Paralympics, and then another bike. And we've been winning stuff. We won 3 World Championships in a row. We got second at the Paralympics, which was a bit of a bummer. But
I saw that.
It was a bit of a disaster. That. But and then another pilot came along. We were kind of the guy I rode with hated me saying this, but we were kind of the B bike. We were consistently getting seconds, but it was close enough. So over a minute effort, there was about half a second-ish between us and the top bikes. It was really kind of interesting still. And then I was driving to the track in September 2019, and basically a car pulled out in front of me and hit it, and big rolled 3-4 times, really big crash.
Goodness.
And I kind of climbed out of the car, literally finished on the roof. It was very dramatic. Climbed out of the car and I thought, this is a miracle. I've crashed at 70 miles an hour and literally didn't have a scratch on me.
Wow.
Didn't have any feeling of injury. And then throughout the evening, I started feeling that kind of headache and fuzziness you get with concussion. And I've had a couple of decent concussions before, which one when I was 16, one when I was 21, I was 29 for this one.
Yeah.
But I sort of felt like it was going. And I got kind of these headaches and did the usual concussion stuff of no short-term memory, slurred speech, and it kind of just continued. I assumed it'd be a couple of weeks and I'd be back, and they didn't really subside. It just sort of continued, and if I did any activity, I started getting sort of dizziness and headaches. And after 6 weeks, went to see a specialist, and I had they call it vestibular dysfunction, which is,
Right.
This is going to be very crude scientific language, but basically the pathways between your kind of visual and balance input are disrupted. Right. So with increased heart rate or head movement, you get kind of vertigo-like symptoms. Gosh. And so
what was that like to hear that? How did that feel in that moment?
Well, initially great to know what it was.
Yeah.
And then I got referred to a specialist down in Winchester.
Okay.
And I said, how long do you think it will take to recover? And they said, if it goes well, 9 to 18 months. And I was like, wow, that was then, obviously really bad. And I started with rehab and had to do with head movement stuff. And there's been quite a few high profile instances of similar long-term concussion recently. And like it basically took me out for 10 months in the end.
And did it, throughout that period of time, were you just thinking about getting back on the bike, or how did you?
Yeah, so, with head injury, it's so much based on fatigue, and you have like a capacity of doing stuff every day, and you wake up and you open your eyes and you feel great, but you're very fragile. So as soon as you begin to engage with the day and any kind of difficult conversations or training or exercise, and by difficult conversations, like this would class as that anything above anything really, talking to anyone probably was enough, and then you just start to get this fuzziness and headaches and with like a brain injury, you get a horrible emotional like volatility with it. So like I was become blind with rage and then really upset, and my kids, to give this like perspective, and I remember the physio said to me, make sure you're in a nice quiet environment. And at the time I've got twin boys and they were 10 months old, and then the daughter's 2, so it's not like a quiet house. No. I mean, you've been here, like you've seen the dogs and the cats, the kids aren't even here, like it's not a quiet, relaxing house. So that was the hardest part, is cycling, and it will come and go. But I was a horrible person really, and then got very upset with it, and like the stress it put my family through and my wife Naomi through was really, really bad. Like that was the bit that was awful.
How did you get through that?
Oh, just her knowing, like her being unbelievably patient and knowing that it wasn't really me, and praying that I was going to come back, basically. Which, so from my point of view, like it was just desperate, like it was horrible. It was really, really, really tough. And then that was the side of it. It wasn't like the injury, it wasn't the cycling, it was just, I was just put so much strain on everyone. And that's really common. I know I've spoken to lots of people since with brain injuries, and that's really, really common. But like it's really tough.
And what does that feel like now? Like looking back, has that changed your perspective on life in any way? Has that had an impact?
Yeah, I mean, it went, so after the physical symptoms subsided, there was still some element of me like, and you start to question yourself, like I don't know if it was lack of confidence or I've changed for good, or I'm just different now, but it definitely lasted 3+ years of not being myself. It wasn't as extreme as the first year, but like it is. I'd say it's only recently, like it's 5 years ago now. The last 18 months, I feel more normal. But it is, and in terms of like reflection, it's just, I think the greatest gift as you get older is perspective, and it's just that nothing. There's a very, you can count on one hand the things that are desperately important, and I've got 3 kids, my wife, and I don't know what the 5th thing is. But I don't think it's cycling. So I think that's what it gives you. Is that perspective, that
like a gratitude almost? Like, do you feel more grateful?
But it's grateful, but it's more, I would say I value it more. So like all the highs and lows of the day to day don't matter. Wow,
that's
like when the big stuff's protected, and obviously sometimes the big stuff isn't protected, and that's obviously really, really stressful. But I think I'm slightly better at managing the kind of general day to day highs and lows.
Smaller things.
Like by small things I mean like like money, work, like still quite big stuff, but they're not.
Of course,
but they're not.
People lose themselves in that so much.
Oh, and don't get me wrong, and there's not to put down on the stress that it can cause.
Absolutely,
but I think it does make me think like, okay, well, the important stuff's still there.
It's not as important.
Yeah.
I remember when my dad, he'd been I was told he was going to be terminally ill, and I remember this feeling of like almost like you were just sort of like at a different level, and like all them things like work or money or different things of that nature just sort of just drifted away into the background, and I was like, none of this matters. Like this, how can you get so like concerned about certain situations? And I remember thinking, like it just brought me to a different level in life, which I felt I kind of, obviously it was a very difficult situation. I don't want that to be the case, but it was a different, like, freeing place to be. Like, did it feel a little bit more, life feel a little bit more free then, would you say?
Yeah, it's quite a powerful way of putting it, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think yes, definitely from a day-to-day point of view, and from a cycling sense, that's probably one of the reasons like I'm going better now, is that I don't mind if I win or lose, which is really weird to say for like an athlete, but like, you know, it's kind of a so what with it. Like, it's just it's a fun extra.
I think that's like really wonderful that you can go into it and just have that enjoy. Like, I assume it's just the enjoyment. Like, you want to do your best.
I do want to win. I do want
to
win, but I feel so comfortable with losing.
And in terms of going back to then, because I know that you did say about, obviously you came second, and I sort of read a little bit about how that seemed like almost a bad thing. Not a bad thing.
Oh yeah,
but do you know what I mean? Like,
as much as I sit here now and say this stuff, like when you know, when I was at that time, that was a disaster. You know, so we're saying, did you? Yeah. So we were we'd won the World Championships 3 years in a row. By over a second, like in a minute event, which is basically smoking it. You know, that's like a real confident win. And then we PB'd by like 4/10 or something, and the Dutch bike went 2 seconds quicker than they ever done before, and we came second. So that was like, I was miserable after that.
Isn't it odd, like, perspective though? Like, to so many people, like, that second would be the greatest achievement of their life, and just because obviously you've been up such a high, and then to have that. Yeah.
That's what I mean. That's what I said. Like the you know, how you frame a result.
Life,
like the person who expected, you know, people always say 4th place is the worst place to come, right? But if you're expecting to get 15th and get 4th, you're probably really pleased with yourself.
Absolutely.
Like, and I think you know, we were going into that such strong favourites that the only emotion we would have felt having won was relief. Like, it's so you can't win in that situation. I don't think. I think you can, but it's not how you imagine it being as a child who wants to win Olympics, Paralympics, you know, and then all you feel is relief. It's not quite how it should be. It's weird. So we were miserable. We were very miserable. And
how did you get through that time?
I mean, I basically just moped about the house for a couple of weeks, and was a bit probably irritating to everyone who was saying well done, and I was like, yeah, but, you know, kind of, you know. So and then genuinely, like, was I mean, you know, I was okay, but I was just really annoyed, basically. And then the local school sports partnership asked me to go and visit all the primary schools in the local area. So I did like a tour of about 35 primary schools, and did an assembly to basically talk about the Paralympics. And it's funny because, you know, I was sort of there to talk about the Paralympics. I didn't want to make too big a deal about the silver medal, because I was like, you know, it sort of made me grit my teeth and be annoyed. And I remember there's like there's two actually. One child who was in the room had cerebral palsy, and the school emailed and said he's really inspired. He's got in touch with the local bocce club to go and play.
Wow.
And then the one that the guy that really got me is I went to a really, really big school with like 500 kids, and I was showing the medal, and one boy put his hand up and said, "Is there Braille on the medal?" And I said, yeah. And he said, "Oh, can I come and read it?"
Wow.
So he came to the front, and I said, how come you can read Braille? And he said, "Oh, I'm losing my eyesight, so I'm going to be blind like in the next 2 years. So I'm learning Braille so I can still read." And then he read out the medal, and the whole school cheered and like stood on their feet and clapped.
Wow.
And I was like, I was like literally like a blubbery mess at the front, like, this is amazing. And I just thought, literally that moment, I just remember thinking, what on earth am I doing, being miserable and moping about because I got silver, this poor kid, you know. And given that this was nearly 10 years ago now, like, it's I just thought, what am I doing? And it genuinely, it felt like a real moment of, I don't, you know, again, it was the greatest of kind of, hear this in the way I mean it, is that I don't really care if I lose. Like, it's just it's just fun. Like, it's a fun challenge, and give it your all and be happy with the outcome, you know?
Get ready to elevate your cycling experience with Dolan bikes. Introducing the Dolan DF5, the most eagerly anticipated track bike in the industry. With its unique aerodynamic design, the DF5 propels you ahead of the competition. Building on the legendary success of the DF4 bike used by Pete Mitchell. Crafted with the same championship-winning philosophy, the DF5 has been tested as the fastest bike they have ever designed. Join the ranks of champions and experience the thrill of victory with Dolan. Choose excellence. Choose Dolan.
You know, the Paralympics is like, there's meaning behind what it is. So when you're walking around the Paralympic Village, you know, you're seeing thousands of people who have a physical disability, right? Yeah. And that means that they've either been through something quite traumatic, or they're born with disability, and they live with that in day-to-day life, right? It's not just, I know it sounds silly, but it's not just when they're competing. And actually, what the Paralympics does is kind of make that, like, accepted, but it breaks down the awkwardness around disability. Yeah. You know, it makes it normal, and I think for me to be part of that as an able-bodied person whilst I felt like I can't represent disabled people, I'm still proud to have been part of the Paralympics. And I've never done an event where I've been able to say that, because if you go to national championships, it's not the same feeling. And don't get me wrong, like, it's not something I thought about every day, but it just made me realise that, you know, there's a bigger picture to what we're doing here. Yeah. It's not just winning the race. Bigger picture than the Olympics, you know. It's the Paralympics, and it's it's something that I'm very proud to have been a part of, regardless of the result, regardless of the performance, regardless of the high performance nature of Paralympic sport. There is a bigger picture, and it's something to embrace and be proud of. And
it's really beautiful, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely. It just seems just such a wonderful event, and even just the medals having all the different sounds and the braille on the. I just find that it's just not something I've thought of, if you know what I mean. And it's just, that's so wonderful how considered that is. And
and just like even being in the Paralympic Village, you know, there's a guy, a cyclist, so he's got no arm to his shoulder and then one arm below the elbow. And I've watched him make a cup of tea, right? And it's unbelievable how he uses his teeth and his stump, and he carries it. And there's, like, you know, some of the Chinese team have got no arms and can use chopsticks with their feet. And it's just like, you just walk around thinking, this is amazing. You know? It's absolutely amazing.
And also, like, no excuse. Like, it's so wonderful, like, to go, actually, I'm going to do something with myself. I'm not going to, like, let this hinder me in any way, and just, like, almost live a normal life for them. You know, that's so wonderful. Like, everything is a choice, isn't it? You know, and it's okay to feel like I can't do it, but also how wonderful and magical it is that people go, actually, I can do it, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to, you know, get into the Olympics. Like, that's a dream for just anyone, you know, but especially.
Well, exactly. Like, and the beauty of it is that at the Paralympics, you know, by and large, it's a level playing field. Yeah. So it's very, like, honest in that sense. So you say there's no excuses, but, you know, if it's two people competing with exactly the same disability, it is quite an interesting concept that, you know, other aspects of life, they do obviously have challenges. Yeah. You know, but in that playing field, it's completely level. Yeah. Which is quite unique, I suppose. Not that I have a disability, but I can imagine, you know, it's quite a fascinating thing
I know what you mean.
To witness, I suppose. Yeah.
And you got out of that, didn't you? You were saying.
Yeah. So I did 3 years prior to Rio, 3 years after, doing kind of world championships and training and stuff. Had the car crash, was out for a year, and then had while I was out, they got somebody to replace me. Obviously, it was supposed to be the Tokyo Paralympics 2020, but got pushed back through COVID. So I was kind of waiting, thinking, oh my goodness, this is amazing. The Games is getting postponed for a year. It gives me a chance to get back in. Yeah. Because I definitely was not going to be ready by 2020. No. But by 2021, there was, you know, an extra year for me to recover, basically. Yeah. But I had a trial a year later to kind of I was still on program, but basically to try and get my spot back because the other rider had been competing. And yeah, he won the trial. It was quite close. It was a few tenths of a second or whatever, but he won the trial, and my time on the program ended essentially. So that was it.
And how did you deal with that?
I thought the trial was going to go that way. Okay. If I'm honest, at the time, I believe that we were very close, and I was 30 and he was 22. So I thought that really played into his strengths. We had slightly different qualities. If you like, he had a better start. I think I had better speed, endurance, whatever. It was pretty close. But put it like this, it wasn't a surprise. It really wasn't a surprise that it went against me. And I was prepared for it. So when I got dropped from the team in 2012, I had nothing. And I was like, suddenly writing on a CV, performs under pressure, didn't feel really very good compared to my friends that had just finished their masters, so I was like, okay, I can't be in this situation again. So I started a coaching business kind of in the side, and made sure that was in a place that whenever I needed it, it would look after me financially. So that, and I really wanted to be racing to win and not for money. So the way our funding worked was, if you get a gold medal, you get A funding. A silver or bronze was B funding, and below that was C funding. And A is roughly double C. So it's a bit of a roller coaster. And I really wanted to try and remove that so that I was financially independent and could race to win, not just like to pay the mortgage.
Yeah. I see what you mean.
So that was in place. So to be fair, as athlete retirements go, I kind of expected it. I had a plan that was ready to go. And it was fine. Like, I kind of, accepted it, did the retirement post saying thank you to everyone for my sort of support throughout my career, and cracked on with the next phase, really, which was coaching, which is great because the business was set up around being largely online, so that I wasn't like present and committed, so I could train well and not be too tired. And then finally I was like liberated because I could make myself tired. I could have late nights, I could travel, I could do all the things I kind of wanted to do in that sense. So I did that and organised training camps, because of it being online. I had quite a global network of cyclists, so I organised training camps all over the place.
That's awesome.
So I got to travel quite a bit, and sort of sprint tactics is my niche. Like, if you like, the tactics of racing is what I kind of, the training weekends that I run. So I did them all over the place and saw the world a bit, and it was great. I did that for 3 years. It was that was it really. Like, I was kind of done, and that's why, like, it's so interesting that I'm kind of back in the athlete role again, because I very much had sort of signed out of that and had retired and accepted it, and I just I miss cycling. So as I said, like, I did kind of went to the gym and was kind of reasonably strong and not fit. Like, aerobically it was rubbish, but was just like a gym goer. And making it work. And I rode a little bit on the tactics sessions that I did just to demonstrate some stuff, but I wasn't training for it. And then I decided to train again because basically I missed it. And the track's only half an hour away. So I missed it, and then they announced last July that they're trying to organise a new racing series, which is potentially got massive prize money. Okay. So you don't win money in track cycling. No. Tour de France, they win some money. Track cycling, you win nothing. So if you win a Nations Cup, which is the level below a World Championships, you get €500. And they're in like Hong Kong, Canada, Adelaide. So no one's covering their plane ticket really. So there's no money in it. But in Japan and Korea, they have a Kirin series, which is the biggest betting sport in the countries. Wow. So they bet like $10 billion a year on Kirin racing. The craziest stat is the Japanese Grand Prix has more money bet on it than in British horse racing annually. Wow. So it's absolutely huge, and they've decided, or they're trying to launch an international race series that's funded by Kirin racing, but they're going to have international riders racing around the world, and then Koreans and basically for the Asian market to bet on. So the prize money is that there's going to be, you know, they're hoping there's going to be 500 full-time professional cyclists that come off the back of this. And it's like amazing. So I was like, great, train for that. They had the induction in February this year. In January. So I trained for that and was going quite well, and they had to do like an assessment of your speed and whatever. And I was going well enough that I thought, I reckon I might do okay at nationals here. And I had said I was never going to ride nationals again because I raced it, you know, probably 12 times. And I got second once, which was great. I got fourth once. And every other time I've been knocked out in the quarterfinals. And I was like, I have no appeal. It doesn't appeal to me to win the first round easily, get battered in the quarterfinals and go home. But I was like, I reckon I'm going fast enough that I kind of will be roughly in the mix. So I entered nationals, like literally decided to enter about 6 weeks before. Went and raced. And the short version is 1.
Wow.
So I qualified 4th. That was where I did the time that was... So I went 2 tenths quicker than I did previously, which in a 10-second race is a lot. Then qualified 4th and ended up winning overall in Manchester, which was just amazing because it was in front of a kind of sellout crowd, and the big thing for me is my kids are 7 and 5, and because I haven't raced for 5 years, you know, they were 2 and like tiny, so whilst they physically watched me race, they had no idea what was going on. But this time, you know, they
cheering you on.
They knew they cheering me on. Like I did the big celebration, you know, did this to like them, and they did it back. It was so sweet and like it was amazing.
That's
absolutely
a beautiful
amazing
moment, isn't it? And like just how wonderful that is.
Yeah, and that'd be funny. I talked about framing races and results.
Yeah,
and that was the one I didn't expect to win. I can't tell you how much I didn't expect to win, and did. So yeah, like it was amazing. It was the most brilliant moment. It really was.
So in terms of like, to me that sounds like it's almost like you're, you know, obviously your child's mentor anyway, but that's like almost, you know, that's so wonderful to see you achieving and doing something that you love, and like what a mentor that is. Now that sort of brings me on to, did you ever have any mentors in your life? Was there anyone that you looked up to or were inspired by when it came to cycling or just generally in life to do what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I mean, I always answer the question that Chris Hoy was very inspirational because he was very he was a nice guy, and I think he genuinely is a nice guy, and had time for me and was great, and obviously very successful, and that, but you know, whilst I knew him and would ask him for advice at a time when he was on the team, we were together, like, like I wouldn't say he's not like someone who's been there throughout my life kind of thing. No. I think, so as an athlete, I would say he was very inspirational. As a mentor, you know, I think it kind of, no one person has like led the way. I think I speak a lot to a couple of very close friends who I would kind of always speak to about stuff. My wife as well is very supportive, and I will talk to death about anything that I need advice on with her. So I would say no. I cherry pick from a few people. I've got a good like little support network that I trust and would sort of speak to and listen to. But there's no one person who's been, you know, I've had coaches I've got on really well with. I've had great coaches that I've also clashed with terribly. So I wouldn't say there's been one person who I'd really attribute to as been my mentor.
I wonder what it is in you then, that like, is there something in you that makes you think differently, or, you know, because I mean, it's a wonderful thing to follow your passion, and it seems like that's what you've done, you know, like it's not everyone is a cyclist, you know. It is it's wonderful that you've been able to do that and do that as a career, if you see what I mean. Yeah, and it's like going for it. Why do you think you did that?
I mean, I went for it a long time ago. It's funny looking back to where I am now and where I was then, because it's a very different answer to the same question.
Yeah,
I think you have to be brave, and sometimes you have to be brave and gamble, you know. Yeah, which is really, really important. I'm a big just generally, I'm a really big believer that, that kind of the process is what delivers the outcome. So whatever, I don't believe in targets to some extent. As in, there's stuff that I want to happen, but saying something doesn't make it so. So what I mean by that is I'd far rather obsess over the plan than the target. Because if you do the plan, the outcome is protected, right? That's what's going to happen. Whereas if you say something, it doesn't make it happen. So with cycling, for example, generally speaking, I don't set targets. I just try to go as fast as I can. Why would I limit? In some ways, why would I limit myself with a target? But then equally, why would I set a target that's unachievable? So I really like that mindset. Now, I think you do need to have some idea of where you're going. Yeah. But that is only to get information to create the plan. Do you know what I mean? So if you lack complete direction, you can't get anywhere. You can't make a plan. So you need to have like an aspiration and stuff. But from a cycling sense, I think just kind of look around, have a crack, and if it's meant to be, it's meant to be.
It's just like, go on.
Yeah, it's just like, when people say I always wanted to be Olympic champion. I did, but that seems so unbelievable. I wasn't the person who knew I was. Obviously, I wasn't, but I never was the person who knew I was going to become professional, be involved with cycling. But I was like, I'm enjoying it. Let's work out how I can give myself the best shot. Do that, and if it works out, great. Because it's about figuring out what works for you. I don't like the desperation. I see it as needing to make it work. I'm like, let's have our best crack at it. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, that's fine. But as long as that
Did you have another plan?
The coaching really protected that.
From an earlier age, did you, when you were younger?
I mean, yes and no. So I had a place at university. And my time in sport, it was a bit more cutthroat than it is now. So the British Cycling said, you cannot go to university. If you try to make it work, we'll take you off the programme. Like, you can't do both. You really can't do both. So I had a place at university. We got stuck into cycling. And then did have a fair few crisis moments in the first 4 years. And then obviously got dropped and was very stressed and it was awful. And then since the coaching's been there, it's given me perspective because, another kind of athlete pet peeve of mine is when they talk about how difficult it is being a professional athlete. I always think, well, try working 40 hours a week and then doing the training you're doing because that's what all the amateur guys are doing. So don't get me wrong, it's not quite as simple as that. But I wanted to make sure that I removed that stress because I like keeping stuff fun. That's what works for me.
Seems like it's taken you a long way as well, and the enjoyment.
Yeah, I guess so. And
I think you need something to keep you going, though. You need to have some kind of. It's got to either be, some people have goals, but then other people have just the enjoyment, that keeps you going. Because how would you deal with the failures, if you didn't enjoy it? If you see what I mean, surely that love of it then keeps you going in that moment. Would that be fair to say for you?
Yeah, exactly. And most people start sport because because they enjoy it.
Yeah. And are good, would you say? Or does that come into it?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it will eventually. You have to be good at something to win it. But, I mean, did you think you stood out in cycling in somewhere?
Yeah. I mean, at a national level, when I was 15, I was under 16 national champion and whatever. So I was pretty good.
And was that natural? Were you naturally good at it?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Interestingly,
how is that possible?
I don't know. I'm terrible at every other sport.
Okay.
I'm not very good at running, so that kind of limits me with all running-based sports.
Okay.
But yeah, I was. I can't say I wasn't. I guess quite talented because, I trained like everybody else and was the best, right? I think people who do well are talented, and it's So I guess I was, but.
And did your sort of daily routine that you would have had, did it differ from others? Were you all training in the same way for you to reach your level of achievement? Do you know what I mean? Is there much of a difference between how you all...
It depends what stage you're at. I think when I was in the senior academy days, we all did the same training.
Did you?
And I sit here now that I'm way down the line from a career point of view, and I'll give you an example, right? So we were told there's a famous cycling kind of quote: if you don't have to stand, sit, and if you don't have to sit, lie. Right? So don't basically rest as much as possible. So I took that to an absolute extreme when I was that sort of age. I was full time, so I was like, basically, if I'm not training, I can be in bed.
Yeah.
Basically, because I'm or sitting or like doing nothing.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where I could barely walk like 500 meters without my legs burning because I just didn't walk anywhere. And, you know, again, like the coaching was very different back then. So if the coach found out, for example, you went to Tesco's to do your weekly food shop, he'd be like, why? He'd actually sit us down and say, why are you walking around Tesco's? You should be getting that delivered. Don't walk. You know? Right? And I was like, okay, right, this is great. I'm learning here. Don't walk. So even the one that was a bit like famous now in like my very small cycling community is I went to Chester Zoo, right? And I was racing a month later. I didn't want to walk. So I phoned them and said, look, if anyone who's actually disabled needs it, it's fine. But if not, can I borrow a mobility scooter? And I went round Chester Zoo on a mobility scooter because I didn't want to walk for 8 hours because I'd have been miserable and grumpy. And I look back at that now and just think, that is insanity, right? That's absolute insanity. But literally, all my respected coaches back then were saying this stuff to me. And if they'd have found out I'd gone to Chester Zoo, they'd have sat me down, they'd have brought senior management in, they'd have made a whole big thing about it. And it's like, that's what I mean with this kind of sacrifice business.
I don't get that,
it's
though.
Mad.
What is the walking?
You should walk, so you're recovering, right?
Just
you want to recover from training.
all the time.
So if you're not, you know, it's the 24/7 lifestyle. If you're not training, you should be doing everything you can to recover, which means don't walk anywhere.
Today's episode was supported by the Queen's Hotel, a place I highly recommend to eat, drink and recharge, relax in comfort and design, build business and networks, to celebrate in style. The Queen's, time well spent.
So the last 3 years I've been coaching, and I coach amateurs by and large. There's a couple of riders who are full time, couple small nations, but generally they're amateurs. And you know, I think the thing that I've learned about myself and that I've learned from watching others is that, you know, like it's so healthy to have lots of different parts to your life that create balance, you know?
Yeah.
And like for me, getting that balance right so that you're enjoying what you're doing adds so much to your performance. Mm-hmm. Your life, when you train, how you structure it should be enjoyable. There should be times where you're not thinking about your sport. Thinking about your sport doesn't make you any better at it. Mm-hmm. As long as the kind of, you know, the
it's almost making it like unenjoyable. Like you're sacrificing almost too much. You're not having You're not having the downtime or the family time, and then ultimately you miss out on so many things that are so precious in life, and that, you know, life's short. You've got to still have those moments of balance and enjoyment away from the main thing that you're doing, like your career or as an athlete.
And you know, and if you ever like mentor somebody or if I was to mentor somebody, you know, you're just trying to give perspective on what's important and what's not, and balance. I don't think any mentor ever says to a young athlete, you need to care more. And you know, maybe like they just don't care, I suppose. But do you know what I mean by that? Like somebody who genuinely wants to achieve at the very, very highest level, and is you know, really kind of focused in that sense, I think it's far more likely that they need to create that balance and enjoyment and kind of complete plan instead of, you know, I think it's far more common that people get burnt out because at the end of the day, and what's really important with that, if people don't care, well then it's not for them, and that's fine. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah. And I think like life has to be a balance though of good. You know, no matter whether you're working towards something and trying to achieve something, you need to have a balance of good. Like, what's the point? Really, you know, if you enjoy cycling and you spend all of your time cycling, there's so many more other things that can almost nourish your soul, or, you know, nourish you and your life. And you need balance and take time for it. And it doesn't have to just be if it was cycling or the thing that you're working towards, does it? If you're enjoying the Jolly Soul podcast, I'd love for you to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. By subscribing, you'll never miss an episode, and you'll help us continue sharing incredible stories with more inspiring guests. If you know someone who would benefit from a conversation, please share it with them too. Your support means so much to us, and we are so grateful to have you here on this journey. So I always ask my guests 3 big questions on life. Now, don't expect to know the answers. You know, it's just your perspective, and nothing's right or wrong, because they're big questions that we probably don't know. But just in a nutshell, as in maybe a 1-word answer or a couple of words. Okay, so what do you think the key to success is?
Ultimately, is having a plan. And that is the simple answer.
Yeah.
It's having a plan, doing the plan, reflecting on the plan, making a new plan, is what I would say.
And what do you think the secret to happiness is?
I mean, the secret to happiness, there's very simple answer would be balance.
Yeah.
That's very complicated to get right. But I think exploring how to look after different parts of yourself in your life and getting that balance right is the secret.
And finally, this is the big one. What do you think the meaning of life is?
So I have thought about this. I think the beauty of life is that there is no meaning. And that allows you to enjoy the present and what you're doing, because I don't think there's a greater purpose with it. So, you know, it's kind of like a blank canvas for you to do what you want with. I don't think we're all striving towards the same thing.
Beautiful answer. Maybe you do have the answers. Okay, and I'm just going to ask you, I believe a quote can change your life or make you think differently. So we've got the Jolly Jar, and I'd like you to just take a quote out that's from our Instagram. And you went for the biggest one. Okay. Okay, so if you could just read it out. Yes, please.
Stop being so hard on yourself. No one has everything figured out. Everyone has their own struggles, and nobody's perfect, so you don't need to be either.
Wow. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for that. That's your quote. You can take that one.
Thank you very much.
And thank you so much for today. It's been really insightful. I really appreciate your time.
No, it's been a pleasure. It's really interesting to explore this stuff. And one thing I love about these conversations is it kind of makes you think.
Yeah.
I don't think we ever take the time to think, you know. We just get stuck in the day-to-day. So I've really enjoyed it. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you very much.